the last of his line. The world-weary old master has one final fight in him. He has been warned against it. He's proven himself the indisputable best time and time again. He has no need to defend his legacy. And his would-be opponent? Most likely looking for revenge for his friend, defeated previously by the old master. But he won't hear it. The old master is determined to show his might. He rises to his feet and braces himself for the challenge. One last time. This sounds like the dramatic climax to an action movie, doesn't it? But this is actually the premise of Kawabata Yasunari's masterwork novel, Meijin, stylized as The Master of Go in English. The book reshapes actual events that took place in 1938. A single game of Go was played out over half a year by the final hereditary Honninbo and Meijin Shusai and his opponent, one of the forgers of the new Fuseki, Kitani Minoru. Who could miss such a sight? The last living legend of the golden era of Go versus a modern marvel of a player. And luck would have it that Kawabata Yasunari was a columnist at the time for the sponsoring Mainichi newspaper. He was given the opportunity to witness the event firsthand and bask in the beauty and refinement of the final golden glimmer of Edo period Go. Later, Kawabata would become the first writer from Japan to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. His nomination was for his narrative mastery and his ability to capture the mind of Japan, all which can be seen within his Master of Go, the novelization of his previous newspaper columns, published 16 years after the game had finished. But to Kawabata, the end of that game was eternal. More, he wanted with every reading of his novel for the players to return to their seats and reprise their adversarial roles, and for the golden moment to flicker to life once more. This, more than anything else, was Kawabata's achievement. When you open the cover and the drama and the game begin to turn once more, all Japan comes back to life with it. The game takes place in many beautiful locations around Japan, from secret mountain inns that look out over serene Zen gardens, to oceanside ryokan that take in the roar of the waves and the wind rushing through the tangled pines. The players savor each moment and play slow. Every twist and turn of intrigue is played out in a subtle twitch of fingertips held over old black iron hibachi braziers, and dagger-like looks hurled through the whorls of cigarette smoke. In the depths of December, the old master plays ever onwards, knowing he must expend his very essence fighting the cold, clutching fingers of the dead of winter, grasping at his cloak. He plays on, never turning his head, never looking back, striving with his every move to etch his name into the Go board one last time. Because that is what immortality looks like. Okay, not really. As if anything could be as refined as that in 1938 Japan, a country gearing up for a world war after decades of militarization and westernization. If the events were truly as deeply poetic as Kawabata depicted them, then the Edo era would have never really ended. This is Kawabata's desire as he plays out the game for us. He wishes to take the reader back to the ways of old things, to the ancient beauty and rigid simplicity of Japan's past. But alas, only in the pages of his book could it be so. Let us unwind the story. Let us retreat away from frostbitten old men, back to the heat of gentle spring and her tender bird songs of wind. Around the start of the Sakura season, the sponsoring newspaper had begun making the negotiations for the game between the old master and the young upstart challenger. Wait, negotiations? You might well ask. Why do they need negotiations? It's a game of Go. The rules? Notoriously simple. And how difficult a subject could time limits be? Or was the payment for the players that was the main concern? No, wait. I got it. The old master was concerned about the lighting. He's old, after all. Was it a prohibition on photos? Well, sorry to say, the truth is, our old master is a cheat, and our upstart challenger a stern, but rightly so, modernist. To ground the events in their grimmer, if perhaps more exciting atmosphere, we need to go back a few years to 1933, when Honninbo Shusai played the game of the century against the equally legendary Go Seigen. But then we need to go back even further to 1924, when the Nihon Kiin, the Japanese Go Association, was founded. So originally, the four Go houses of the Edo era had held the power to issue dun rankings to players. But by the time the Nihonki-in was founded, only the Honninbo house remained, with the old master Shusai at its head. This, the old master claimed, awarded him and him alone the power to award and issue dun rankings, a common source of income to the Go houses in ages past, and one, of course, the newly formed Nihonki-in was interested in having as well. The Nihonki-in responded by issuing a new kind of ranking called Q, which is well familiar to you. But of course, the old dun rankings held more prestige, and it took a lot of bartering and time to get Shusai to effectively issue a proclamation that he was awarding the Nihonki-in the power to issue those dun rankings. This turn of events would set the stage for all future interactions between the old master and the new Go community at large, one wherein the old master was effectively God and the community his stooping, stuttering subjects. Shusai had a long history of being domineering, even against the background of Edo Japan, with its highly regulated caste system. In such a system, the people above you were of course given favor and due deference, but from the very start of his time on top, Shusai appears to have been a manipulative personality. The Honninbo before him, Shuei, wanted to leave his title of Honninbo to another one of his pupils instead of Shusai. By the way, Honninbo Shuei was one of the strongest players to have ever lived, perhaps even stronger than Honninbo Shusaku and Honninbo Shuwa. He was almost 2 stones stronger than every other player around him in his prime, and only one of his pupils, Honninbo Shusai, could play him without a handicap in his old age. His style was defined by strong shapes in the center of the board that would later form into a territory that would allow him a few points needed to win. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's continue. After Shuei's death, however, Shusai simply claimed the title for himself on the basis that he was the strongest pupil. In his defense, one could say that tradition did state that the strongest pupil in the Honninbo house became the next head, but this tradition came with the stipulation that the heir had been chosen by the current head. It was not a simple contest of strength. Normally, the next head of the Honninbo house was raised to be so, receiving special lessons and training so as to become the strongest. This meant that the tradition of being the strongest pupil was secondary and in service to the wishes of the current Honninbo. That Honninbo Shuei explicitly listed Shusai's personality as one of the reasons he did not want to leave the Honninbo title to him, despite his strength, tells us a lot about him. Fast forward toward the end of his career, and Shusai has made a history of abusing his position as the final Honninbo and the final Meijin under the traditional systems. It is no surprise that when we come to the famous game between Shusai and Goseigen in 1933, that the old master pulls some nasty tricks, but that's a story for another time. 5 years and a few more controversies later, and Shusai has finally been forced off his throne into retirement. But it's not enough. Shusai's is an ego that always needs more stroking. Worse, he hears the jeers echoing about Japan.
Sold the Honninbo title like a petty crook. Actually, now that I think about it, he was never really that good.
And another person, Kitani Minoru, had never stopped bristling over his friend Goseigen's harsh treatment. By 1938, the newspapers had taken up the job of sponsoring the Go world from the government, and they knew the scent of a generational tale when it presented itself. The Mainichi was keen to sponsor a retirement game for Shusai, and a tournament was held to find his match. The thirst for revenge was strong enough to propel Kitani to the top, and he took his chance with relish. He was stern and clear and stood firm on his demands during the negotiations. Shusai would not have his way like before. Time would be limited to 40 hours, and the move was to be decided and sealed before the players left for a break. It is a testament to the remaining power that the name Honninbo and Meijin held that it took months of back and forth to get Shusai to finally concede even the smallest of issues to Kitani. But in the end, a fair game it would be. Kitani held black and Shusai white. No komi. Shusai was surprised. Why play the old way? Kitani had pioneered the new Fuseki with Go Seigen to great acclaim, but now he was playing old-fashioned? Even a Shusai could diagonal for move 5? But wait, what's this shape? This 4-stone bent L in the center was something familiar to Shusai. His old master, Honninbo Shuei, was fond of such a shape, wasn't he? And here, what kind of a lumbering move is that? And finally, the pieces fall into place. This isn't a game of old style versus new style, or even refinement versus tradition. This is Kitani Minoru showing Shusai what the real line of Honninbo should have been. Okay, not really, but it was a good story, wasn't it? Kawabata sure seemed to think so. We took the tale in different directions than he did in his Master of Go, but it goes to show that the real-life events of the Japanese Go scene were fraught with all kinds of drama and excitement, even after the Golden Edo Age was dead and buried. Kawabata's line traced the ghost of his beloved old Japan, while we were busy chasing the lines of political intrigue, but in both cases, the actual truth is unknowable. It is true that Kitani must have felt some sort of sympathy for his friend, and when his time came, he took many lessons from Go Seigen's experience. And it is true that Kitani's play bears a passing resemblance to Honninbo Shuei's. It is not possible to say for certain what Kitani was actually thinking, or if his moves had any deeper meaning than a desire to win. It is true that Shusai became the head of the Honninbo house against the wishes of Shuei. It is also true that Shusai had a poor reputation off the Go board, and took advantage of all his prestige to make modern Go work for him. But it is also true that he was a strong Go player, and held his own at the top for a long time. Many of his contemporaries had to begrudgingly admit he was the strongest of his era. His mistake in facing Go Seigen and Kitani Minoru was in his unwillingness to have that era end. And here we are finally in complete agreement with Yasunari Kawabata. Kawabata famously said after the end of World War II and Japan's defeat that he would only write elegies. He kept his commitment. His old master and young upstart are caricatures of the real Shusai and Kitani, playing to mournful tunes in Kawabata's war-shadowed mind. More vital still, the surreal background where time seems to stop that they sigh and shuffle through is very real, and many of the places they play their hallowed game in can still be visited today. The feeling embraced by Kawabata's novel is also very real. Many Japanese felt disillusioned with what Japan had become during and after the war. The Master of Go is a window onto that longing of a people for a time of refinement and beauty, a time of peace and prosperity, and a time when eyes threw daggers and cigarettes put up smoke, not bayonets and battleships. The magic that was there, by the sea, under the awning in the Zen garden, is still here. We can access it any time we wish, with a Go board and stones or this book. This quiet, shaded moment is our heritage as Go players, and it always pays to take a moment and remember that you can play a game for the beauty of it alone. That beauty has captured the minds of generations, and Kawabata's mind especially held the power to say what all of us feel when we grit our teeth, raise our hands, and make our move. Here in the pages of the Master of Go, more than a classic game awaits you. History awaits, warming its hands over the old hibachi, watching the shadows flicker off the slate shell. Wait, what's that? What happened to Shusai and Kitani, you ask? The score?